Oh, and Sean. Okay, good evening. Welcome to the Westborough Advisory Finance Committee meeting, March 13th, 2025, here in Memorial Hall and Town Hall. This being our 26th meeting of fiscal 2025, and I'm happy to announce our last planned meeting before annual town meeting on March 22nd, Saturday morning, when we will gather. It's been a busy month. Pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023, this meeting will be conducted in person and via remote means in accordance with applicable law. This means that members of the public body as well as members of the public may access this meeting in person or via virtual means. In-person attendance will be at the location in the posted agenda, and it is possible that all members of the public body may attend remotely, with in-person attendance consisting of members of the public. This meeting may be accessed remotely via the link in the posted agenda. When required by law or allowed by the chair, persons wishing to provide public comment or otherwise participate in the meeting may do so by in-person attendance or by accessing the meeting remotely. Additionally, the meeting will be broadcast live in real time via Verizon Channel 28, Charter Channel 192, or via Westborough TV's online platforms at westboroughTV.org, youtube.com/Westborough TV. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed by Westborough TV, and we thank them for doing that and making it available to the public. Okay. So, first off, anybody here for public comment? Seeing none? Not that there's no people here, but they're not here for a public comment. Okay. We shall jump into our agenda, which is finishing up, getting ready for annual town meeting and our R&R book. So I would suggest we go through the articles and see if we're ready to vote for them, or we will wait until town meeting for them. And right now, according to Walter, there are two budgets still open to vote on and Article 15. So let's start with the simpler one. Rod, I know you've been looking into this. We could discuss whether we want to vote tonight.
So the question was whether it made sense.
Use the mic a little bit.
Sorry. So Article 15 was for the HVAC rooftop units. There's 16 of them that cost around $35,000 a piece. There's one that serves the locker room that costs $105,000, and the rebate is, I think, $22,000. So in comparison to the other units, it's not as cost effective. I'd like to review this at the Municipal Building Committee, but I'm prepared to vote on it today as a positive, and then we'll figure out the rest of the details at the Municipal Building Committee if it makes sense. Chris, Jim Stewart is away right now, and Jim didn't have all the information, but I'm prepared to vote on it tonight just to put it on the record.
Okay. And you're in favor or against? Okay. Okay. I think I have enough information. I kind of felt like that one might not be the best deal, but it might be also good if we're doing all that work. It may be more expensive to do something less expensive later. I don't know. And you would
if
have
we save money at the end of the day,
right.
all the better.
Right. And that would that be handled by the Municipal Building Committee? That build? No, probably not, or maybe.
Microphone?
Okay. Oh, Beth's
The
joined
answer
us.
was no, Beth. It wouldn't normally be handled, but they have a meeting, so.
Well, it's part of the community
Pretty
center,
close.
so conceivably could be on them.
Okay. Anybody else feel like they need more information? You're ready to go? Since we're ready to go, so let's put a motion in place and then we can vote. That's what we're looking for.
I move to recommend the town vote to transfer $824,200 from free cash for the HVAC rooftop units at the community center.
Bradley, second.
And this is Article 15 for those keeping your scorecards at home. 3, and today's the 13th. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Are there any further comments, questions, concerns? If not, Prashant?
Ahuja, yes.
Blumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Chimala, yes.
Clap, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
Okay, so that covers 800, 8 present. Very good. Okay. Have you gotten any further with your exploration on wastewater or water
Yeah, so
enterprise?
we had a meeting of the wastewater treatment plant on Wednesday. I had questioned the CPI that was used, which was 8%. It was explained to me that it's a different CPI than the national one, and the area that covers this is slightly higher. That being said, I asked Chris Payant what he was using for Viola on the water treatment plant. He said 5%. The wastewater treatment plant is a little different in terms of how they handle some of the other expenses. I was assured that even if we voted it at the higher number, that we would actually, the users would only be billed on the actual amount. So based on that, I'm prepared to vote in the positive, or would recommend we vote in the positive. At the same time, would expect that number to come down next year.
And so that number we vote doesn't set the contract for Viola. It's
Right.
whatever we end up.
Yeah,
I don't know how that's
I
done.
believe the CPI gets set in May.
Okay. Anybody else interested in talking about this further? If not, all right. We can do both at once, I think.
Yep.
Make our life simpler. Okay, so we're going to discuss another part of Article 7, specifically the wastewater treatment expense and water enterprise expense budget lines.
McMahon, I move to recommend the town vote to approve the wastewater treatment plant expenses and water enterprise expenses at the amounts listed on the budget table.
Bradley, second.
And that's for both of them. Okay, good. Any further discussion? Prashant?
Ahuja, yes.
Lundberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Clap, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
Those are both at 800. Okay. We have a budget. Well, we have a recommended budget. Awesome. And the warrant is completely voted as well. Good job, I'm done. Oh, sorry.
Motion to, no.
Okay. So, let's see. What else do I got on my agenda before I get too carried away? All right. We're done with budget. We're done with warrant articles. Report and recommendations, including comments and narratives, etc. And then we will be approving this for printing, plus or minus some amendments or proofing and stuff. And also, we have to discuss a number of books to buy, etc. Okay, first off, I guess, because it's on the top here, we need to add to our article recommendations for town meeting, the article we just voted, not the budget. Was it the number on the other one, 15 or something?
Number 15, yeah.
Yes, so we need a committee. Oh, looks like I started one.
Yeah, you already wrote one. You just need to fill in.
Oh, I think I wanted to remember the rebate, but anyway, I had written there will be a rebate of $523,250, which reduces the cost of the town to $300,950. The town must vote the full amount to proceed. That's more of an explanation, and I think I wanted to know the number, so I put it there. But I think this is a good opportunity to get, with the rebates, to get these units covered without being part of the big construction project and the associated OPM costs. Been told, I guess we already paid for the architect because they designed it. So, anybody have any other ideas?
No, I thought what you had in there was fine.
Okay, should I just leave this or add? I think we should have mentioned something about
About the OPM.
No, I don't care exactly about the OBM, but it's just the opportunity to get the work done with the rebates.
That's in there, though. Isn't that already in your draft?
Well, it just says there will be a rebate. Okay, that's good enough for me. Good enough for you. Everybody good with that? Jane looks perplexed.
Doesn't it say the amount?
It does.
Oh, okay. I thought you were saying it doesn't say the amount. I was
No,
kidding.
no, I was
sorry.
going to say it wasn't very flowery language
Yeah.
or something. It was very
less,
succinct.
less words are
Look,
fine.
I didn't make any edits to that one even. I don't
Okay.
think. And I made lots
And,
of
all
edits.
right, well, I do have to change that it, the vote was 800 and using free cash and to approve. So those changes will be, AFC recommends the town vote to approve this article using $824,200 of free cash, and it's 800. Okay, so that's good. All right, other comments on this list? People?
Submitted something before I got here, so.
Oh, you can't do that. How am I going to see that? You have to tell
That's
us.
okay, it's very minor, not as big as hers, I'm sure.
I'm not accepting any more now by mail, so you'll have to tell me now what it is, because I can't.
Oh, it's just cleanup, like, it's just a little language to it. Okay,
No.
all
No.
right.
I mean, I can't do that, because unless it's trivial punctuation stuff, because we're allowed to change that later.
Yes, the majority,
But I'm
there's
not
nothing
gonna do-
materially changed.
Okay.
Clarification of grammar.
All right.
So, yeah, there was no material
Okay, so I will
changes.
consider that. So you have that. You have others? No, you didn't have any. You didn't send any. Okay. There was one issue which I sent an email to Rod and forwarded it to Josh about that I would like to bring up, and that was specifically the comment on the minority opinion on Article 27, which I felt was a bit over the top in that it didn't seem like it was accurate, and it also seemed kind of set the wrong tone.
So I've got a suggestion.
And so I was hoping you guys would come up with something a little different.
I haven't talked to Josh, so this is.
Josh is away, so.
Yeah. So I didn't see any issue with the first paragraph, but let me know if anybody else does.
Mr. Chair,
Yeah.
if I could just comment on what Rod just said. Actually, the first sentence is inaccurate. Proposition 2.5, a state petition passed by the voters in 1980 placed a 2.5 limit on property tax increases. That's not an accurate statement. So it starts off with a factual incorrection.
So say, where are you again, John?
The very first sentence of the minority opinion,
Say 2.5.
it's 2.5% limit plus new growth.
Okay.
And it's not on taxes, it's on the amount that could be raised. So Proposition 2.5 specifically is applied to the levy limit of the prior year, not the amount that is spent or raised. Proposition 2.5 does not limit the amount of taxes you can, it does not limit based upon the prior year's spending. It has nothing to do with that. It's simply based upon the amount that could have been raised in the prior year, even though it might not have been. So it references that a few times, and it's just not an accurate representation.
So would it be correct to say Proposition 2.5, a state initiative position passed by the voters, et cetera, place a 2.5 limit plus new growth, 2.5% plus new growth limit on the levy limit?
Above the levy
Prior
limit of the
years.
prior year, yes.
On the prior year's levy limit. Okay. Sound okay to you?
Yep.
Okay. Westborough's been able to exceed the limit for many years because of provisional law. Well, we haven't, that's the other
that
problem
sentence
is
is
we
right
actually
here.
haven't exceeded that lik. We exceeded a
See it?
2.5% increase in taxes,
Right.
maybe we would say.
That's fine.
Westborough's been able to exceed a 2.5% increase in taxes. New growth includes, I think that's all true. Personal property, new growth is primary.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
If I could just make a couple other comments that I'll go
right.
through. I guess just backing up for a second, talking about new growth and removed from the levy limit. New growth is never removed from the levy limit. That's the whole point of a levy limit. It's just part of it. Just like the 2.5 is not removed. It's just every year, that's the way Proposition 2.5 defines it. Personal property is no different than any other new growth. If you were to build a new deck on your house and replace the deck, it could be new growth. And then when you get down to the second paragraph,
Let me handle it, because I do the second paragraph. Suggest my changes first, and then.
sure, of course, yeah.
No, yeah, let's stay in the first
Yep.
paragraph.
Sorry.
So I don't know that anything you said means that it's inaccurate in the first paragraph.
I think it's the idea that we've been able to exceed something. There's nothing that we've exceeded.
Yeah, well, we changed the second sentence so far to Westborough has been able to exceed a 2.5% increase in taxes, not in the limit.
It just seems confusing because
Yeah.
not doesn't limit either. So we're not exceeding anything.
So has been able to implement, right? So I think Christie's right. It is a little misleading by using the term exceed. So why don't we use a word other than exceed in that sentence so that we're not combining the two, right? Like we've been able to realize increases greater than 2.5%.
That's fine.
I mean, I get the point you're trying to get to. She's right. Like, I don't think we want it to
Yep,
sound
that's
like
fine.
we're skirting the rules by
Well,
trying
I think the
to.
using of the 2.5 number is misleading because it makes people think of Prop 2.5 and that's applicable. You could use 3% or 4%. I mean, the 2.5
Right.
is an arbitrary number, especially since it allows for 2.5 plus new growth. 2.5 plus new growth last year was, 6.17%, over what was spent. So using that 2.5, Christie's right, makes it seem like you're exceeding something that is tied to Prop 2.5 inaccurately. When in reality, we have been within Prop 2.5. Last year, we used some excess levy capacity. It was the first time that we've done so since I've been here. So that's the first time we've ever used that capacity in 14 years that I know of. I mean, I think going back to when AstraZeneca became a LLC, frankly.
How about if we use the select board's goal of 2%?
Are you keeping up with all this, Walter?
No, I'm trying to catch up to the last one. Okay, so right now, we got the first sentence. Westborough's been able to, you could say, exceed the select board's goal of 2%, if you want.
Sure.
I do think that makes sense and not further confusing the two. Two issues, not the
2% for many years.
2.5%. See, it's confusing even.
I would just say, and I think the sentence ends there, right, for many years?
Doesn't actually tie back to the article.
Right.
So that's the hard part because the article does propose 2.5%. And I think that the reason he used 2.5% is because he's looking at Prop 2.5. I don't know. I mean, I get the challenge, right? If we're trying to reference the original article
Yeah, but we're
because you
not-
voted in support of it, but doing it in a way that doesn't confuse the.
Right. But I think it's important that we, as the Advisory Finance Committee, have at least, what it says in there is accurate. It's very
Factually
important.
Correct.
Factually
Yep.
correct. And
Agreed.
I'm really happy to have different opinions, but I don't want us to participate in misinformation, so to speak. But
No,
I think
I'm
this
fine
is
with that.
fine, yeah. And I don't think that was Rod's goal either, or Josh's. Okay, so right now, if Westborough's been able to exceed the select board goal of 2% for many years, because of our high levy limit? Is that fair to say? No? We've been able to do it without an override because of the high levy limit. You could say that.
Because of the new growth.
Yeah, because of the new
Right.
growth.
And
because of
because
the-
the base 2.5% above
It's
the
hard for me to
2%
write
target
something because
anyway.
I didn't vote.
No, I know.
against
That's-
it. Just throwing the hay out there.
Because we have excess levy capacity.
Yeah.
We don't tax.
We don't tax to the max, as they say, tax to capacity, which some communities do.
It could be worse.
Because in the end, I think one of Mr. Savoy's goal was to do an underride, so to speak, so there is no excess levy limit, right? Yeah. All right, so right now I have, Westborough has been able to exceed the select board goal 2% limit for many years, I should say without an override, because we have excess levy limit. Sorry. I can't read and talk at the same time. Let me limit. Override. And what's the proper term for that override? It's is it just an override, or is there a?
Sorry, what?
What's the proper word for one of those overrides that you have to vote for when you want to exceed proposition? It's just called override. Okay, so we're good with override. It's 2 R's and override, by the way. All right. And then I guess we could, there's no reason not to include the fact that new growth includes blah, 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 right? That seems benign and accurate.
Yep.
Includes new construction, improvements, and personal property. Equipment and inventory. Personal property new growth has been a primary driver at this, I'm the personal property has been a primary, Westborough's ability. No, we haven't exceeded the tax limit, so. I would say it's primary driver of our, has it? Is that the primary
Yeah,
driver of
that's
our?
absolutely factual. 65% of our new growth is in personal property.
Okay,
But
but
the-
it's a primary driver of our increased levy limit.
In our increased
Not-
capacity,
New growth.
new growth,
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
yeah.
okay.
The inaccurate part is when it says tax limit and never removed due to depreciation. Nothing could remove it from the levy limit, nor would it do that with residential property or any other property. That's just what Prop 2.5 does. It adds it to the levy limit. And so nothing, the theory that anything that would be removed is not a thing under the law, no matter what type of property it is. And as long as our personal property value continues to grow, right? And it's difficult to discuss depreciation when the total value contributing to the town is continuing to grow. And Mr. Bain and I have had that discussion a few times, but it seems to not get into the white paper.
Okay, I got paragraph 1 done now, I think. So I'm going to do that, and then we can move on to Rod's suggestion for paragraph 2. Proposition 2.5, a state initiative petition passed by the voters in 1980 placed a 2.5% limit plus new growth. The limit should be on the other end. A 2.5% plus new growth limit on the previous year's levy limit. Westborough has been able to exceed the select board goal of 2% it says limit, no, 2%.
Rod, you've got a suggestion to replace this all, right?
No, just the second
No,
paragraph.
second paragraph.
Oh,
Two,
I
yeah.
thought that was the second paragraph you were
No.
reading.
Is the select board 2% in budget, or is it in tax increase?
It's,
It's in memoriam.
I
Yeah.
believe it was budget. Could be wrong, but
I usually wouldn't, I mean, it's so hard to do the tax thing. I think it's much easier.
14 that we put it in,
Yeah.
but it was,
I thought it was budget growth back when CPI was 1.
Well, I'll put an increase on budget increase. Till we find out otherwise.
I don't think we've ever met it.
No. Without an override for many years because we have excess levy limit. And then new growth includes new construction, improvements, personal property such as merchandise, machinery, equipment, and inventory. Personal property new growth has been a primary driver of the increase in new growth and therefore the levy limit. Okay. Rod.
So I've got,
Paragraph
I've got
2.
what's written in the book,
Okay,
but I
what's
don't
it
think
say?
it helps us. In 2014, the select board adopted a goal of increasing no more than 2%. Doesn't say what it's increasing, so I'll have to go back to the. back
Okay,
to
I'm
the book.
pulling it up in the budget document right now. If you,
That's
That's
where I
from the
found
budget
it. That's where I found it.
Yeah, it's not specific.
Anyhow,
Yeah, we'd have to ask somebody from the select board. Oh, wait, if only we could find one.
As
We
it
have a
is-
quorum of.
As it is, we have a quorum to edit a statement, so that's
Yeah.
awesome.
Okay,
all right, paragraph 2.
yes.
The excess capacity has now reached approximately 13 million. Like, you can use 12.5 if that's more accurate, period.
It's,
And then, as a result, the property increases, tax increases have been 6.2%. Blah, 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 blah.
okay, so that
There's no
skips.
causation there.
Okay.
I
Okay,
mean,
no,
excess-
okay, no, that's fine. Property tax increases over the past 3 years have been, period.
Right, so we,
But it doesn't have anything to do with the excess levy capacity. 'Cause
yeah,
except for one
but,
year, we are not tapping it. so.
but it's just a complaint, which
Right.
is fine.
Right,
It's not untrue.
right.
So
I just want to
growing-
make sure you
growing
don't say
needs-
as a result of the excess levy capacity.
Yeah, so growing
No.
excess levy capacity every year means that we are staying under
Right.
what Prop 2.5 would allow if we were at our levy.
Right.
If you remember, 20 years ago, we actually were under $1,000 of excess levy capacity, so, and again, part of it is because of growth in the town in terms of property values and personal property, but growing it up to 13 million. I take it as a positive. It's good that we've grown excess levy.
You should use a mic if you're gonna talk this much. I thought you just throw in a quick, I'm feeling about the people who are at home can't hear.
Yeah. Ian Johnson, 9 Birds Adams Way. And I was just saying it was sometime in the early, I want to say about 20 years ago. I could be wrong, but around that time that we basically had less than $1,000 of excess levy. So we were basically at the Prop 2.5 limit here in Westborough. And through efforts of a number of folks, put policies in place that allowed us to basically not spend up to our limit, which we were doing, or we're spending over our limit, which then allowed us to grow that excess levy capacity. Again, all that excess levy capacity, as you guys all know, means that that's the amount that we could raise in taxes. So we could basically spend another $13 million, budgets, whatever, under that excess levy capacity without hitting a Prop 2.5 limit. That's kind of the discipline that you guys look at, we look at, whatever, is to try to keep that, and it's a good thing to grow it because it means that you're basically staying under what Prop 2.5 was set to be. So except for, I think as you said, 1 year, we've stayed under that all the years. And I think that's a great goal to try to do because it basically says if we were at our levy limit, what would we need to stay under that 2.5 plus new growth, and we've done that pretty much every year.
Okay,
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. I think we have the minority opinion now scribed as the following. Proposition 2.5, a state initiative petition passed by the voters in 1980 placed a 2.5% plus new growth limit on increasing the previous year's levy limit. Westborough has been able to exceed the select board goal of 2% budget increase without an override for many years because we have excess levy limit, I should say, an excess levy limit.
No.
No.
That's not accurate.
Oh, the whole sentence is not accurate?
Yeah, that, you can, well, first of all, the goal is 2%. You could exceed 2% every year
Without
at
an
2.5%
Oh, we were
with
so
zero
close.
growth.
We were so
You don't
close,
need any
Gene.
excess levy. But if you
Okay.
want to make it accurate, it should be accurate.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's not that we have excess levy capacity that allows us to have a budget growth more than 2%. That's not why we're able to.
It's the amount of new growth, period.
Well, I mean, the goal is 2%. So even with no new growth, you'd have 2.5%. You could always exceed it up to 2.5,
Right.
but it's the new growth.
Right.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think the bottom line for me is, taxes are too high. The average income may go up 3% if the valuations of our homes are going up 5%, and that's new growth. We automatically have the ability to tax more than people's salaries. So, and it's the people that can't afford it, who have limited incomes, that I think it affects the most.
Sorry, excuse me. I should introduce myself. John Steinberg. I'm the finance director. If the value goes up in your house, that's not new growth. Only if you build new things is it new growth. The values fluctuate year to year based upon the market. And if all of the values moved and the spending stayed the same, right, it would just affect the rate, right? The fact that values are pushing up, if they all went up the same amount, right, and the spending stayed the same, then just because the value went up wouldn't mean that your taxes went up, right? I mean, you're right in the sense in that the thing that drives your taxes is spending, not the increased property value. That's simple math. That's why we've seen the tax rate go down. There are properties in town that have not gone up as much, right, that haven't seen that acceleration. In fact, some years when the average single-family home went up 17% and the condos only went up 7%, most condo owners saw actually a property tax drop because the rate went down so much because the whole value of the town went up so much. So people get that confused as to how the value of their home going up means more property taxes. That's not true. It's just math.
Well, other than when it goes up relative to industrial property.
Well, then it
Then it's
shifts
a
more.
slight shift.
Then it shifts more from the residential
Or
to
relative
commercial
to your
industrial.
neighbors.
Correct.
But it's a good point, and it drives
So
me
what-
crazy because people always say, like, if the value of my house went up, so did my taxes. They didn't, right? If all of our houses went up, then the taxes are the same because the budget's the same.
Right, which is why we
So
look
you're
at
saying
average
it's
family.
something with a building
Right.
permit is new growth.
Something
not-
with a building
not
or
some-
lack
or-
of a building permit, but something they
still
build,
growth.
right? Yeah, something you would build that hasn't been taxed before,
Right.
being taxed for the first time is new growth.
All right, so here's my suggestion. The second sentence becomes, Westborough has been able to exceed the select board goal of 2% budget increase without an override for many years. That's true.
You could leave out the without an override part because you wouldn't need an override, I would suggest.
Okay. Yeah. That's right. Westborough has been able to exceed the select board goal of 2% budget increase for many years, and it describes new growth. A little bit of a non sequitur, but not too horrible. Because the next thing it says, the personal property growth has been a primary driver of the increase in new growth and therefore the levy limit. And then we get to the second paragraph, the excess capacity has now reached approximately 12.5 million. Property taxes increases were 6.21, 5.62, 4.43. Good enough?
Good enough.
All right.
I know that we just settled this, but it actually says in the budget document that the goal of maintaining the property taxes at 2% increase.
Okay,
So
well,
it's
that's
not
good.
budget, it's property taxes.
Thank you.
And I have to be that person.
No,
don't have the
I
opportunity
just
to
put it there
redline,
as a
so-
pop. I figured you'd find it eventually. Should
We all
tell-
know I'm going to be that person.
Exceed the select board goal of 2%
property tax increase.
Okay,
I wonder what that means.
that's hard to do, to figure out inversely, because you have to,
Yeah.
you have to make all your decisions after, it's recursive
Right.
calculations.
Yeah.
Glad we don't have to do that.
Well, and the
John's
rate's
gonna
not
be busy.
set when the budget's set.
Right.
So your budget, I mean, there's no way to
Is it
really be
rate?
sure
Is
when
it
you
average?
set the budget that the rate's gonna work because it's
Right.
based on other revenue projections that you won't know until the rate, like,
Okay. Anyway, thank you, Rod, for making the changes or agreeing to the changes. Are there any other ones in this that have more than typographic?
And I apologize, I misunderstood the date that would need to be done by, so
No, it's fine.
feel free to
I
bypass
thought
it.
if it was major stuff, I just,
Nope.
it's hard to do it live at the meeting unless
course.
it's minor. And the minor stuff I'll go through and clean up because I can do that. Okay, so you sent that, that's fine. All right, so something else, John?
Yeah, sorry, Mr. Chair. If I could just throw one thing out that's sort of going sideways from this. With regards to the retained earnings for stormwater, we actually don't have any retained earnings from stormwater until after July 1st, when the first year of billing for stormwater has gone. Last year being the first year, or I should say fiscal 25 was the first year of stormwater. And in doing so, capital was raised within the stormwater budget as one-time capital requests. It wasn't an operational budget, it was a one-time capital that was funded through the stormwater fees.
Yes.
Article 11D calls for $96,000 from incorrectly stormwater retained earnings. And we spoke with John Arnold today about making a modification to change the source of that, similar to last year, for it to be raised and appropriate within the stormwater enterprise for the $96,000. So changing the funding source to the stormwater enterprise fund, not stormwater retained earnings. We wanted to make you aware of that so that you weren't surprised.
Let me catch up to where we are in our thing. Because I,
6.
so it's,
yeah, but not on the warrant. I want to see it where it's in our recommendation.
I believe it's 11D.
So it's not D because D's a 1-ton dump truck.
Oh,
or is
right.
Yeah,
this-
it is the one-ton dump truck. It's
okay.
one-ton dump truck is funded from 3 different enterprise funds.
39% of
Okay.
this funding's from free cash.
Oh, and stormwater 24%. So what does that want to
So
say?
it would still be the same amount.
Yeah.
However, it wouldn't be from enterprise. It would be from raise and appropriate within the stormwater. It's not going to change what anyone pays in stormwater fees.
So what you're saying is, because right now we're recommending it's from free cash and retained earnings. It's going to be free cash, retained earnings,
and
and-
stormwater enterprise.
and stormwater enterprise? Is that
Yes,
good enough?
raise and appropriate through stormwater enterprise. And
So
again,
so the return earnings now is specific to sewer and water.
yes, and
So that
again,
could be called
it's
out.
not going to impact what people pay in stormwater. The stormwater rates are set, and they cover both the budget and would cover this amount as well.
But doesn't a raise and appropriate cost people more in the long run?
Not through the enterprise fund, unlike, so the stormwater is not quite like the water sewer in that it's not a user-based in the same way. It's based upon impervious surface. So unless you change your impervious surface, the rate of the stormwater fee is not changing. There, I don't remember what the cycle is where they're going to reevaluate that. But the purpose of the stormwater fund is to raise monies to be expended on stormwater projects. And so built into that is the presumption of building retained earnings. And so they would just build less retained earnings by $96,000 this upcoming year. Last year it was $200,000 or $300,000.
Right, so the difference
Can I
is
just,
retained
can I help
earnings.
out?
Yeah.
Okay, Beth, I think you're just getting, the problem is that the terminology raise and appropriate is used, when it's normally used, you just say raise and appropriate. Typically that implicitly means from the taxes that are raised. In this case, the motion will be raise and appropriate from the Stormwater Enterprise Fund. And that means that the money is raised and appropriated specifically from there. So it's a little complicated just because money is raised and appropriated from different sources, but it's the fact that the expected motion calls out the enterprise fund where the money is raised from and where it's appropriated from. But it doesn't actually impact, since that money is already there because of the stormwater bills that some of us have been paying, the money's already been raised, and this just appropriates it and allows it to be used for this use, rather than from the retained earnings that wouldn't exist until July 1st.
Okay.
Okay, so can I say this motion, not the motion, our recommendation is now.
Can I just add one more thing?
Yeah, sure.
We can finish this one out. There's one other retained earnings with regards to. No, for stormwater.
On this article?
Oh, no, finish that.
Yeah. No. Article 1D, we would change our note to AFC recommends the town vote to approve this article using free cash, sewer and water retained earnings, and raise and appropriate through the Stormwater Enterprise Fund. Everybody okay with that?
Yeah, and then below it just shows percentages, so that
And it
makes
has
sense.
the percentage below.
Yep.
That's fine.
Do we
By
need to
name.
revote that?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I mean, I don't.
Do-
I
do
don't feel it
we-
necessary. To me, it's the same thing. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Do
a
we need
it's
to
a good
clarify-
technicality for town meeting because it's
Yeah.
you have to say it that way. But we intended that percentage was coming from stormwater, and it still is.
Yep.
There's no, to me, is no change
Is-
of intent.
Will the raised and appropriate phrase alarm people or concern
Not my
people and maybe
problem.
do?
It's the
But
technical
should we
language.
maybe
Beth.
clarify it? Right, but I'm wondering if we could just clarify it and say this does not impact your taxes.
Well, we already have a sentence here that says, are paid for by the users of those utilities and not the general levy. So I think that's
Okay.
reasonably clear. I don't know. I'm sure whoever's doing the article can explain that too. We're not supposed to explain the whole article. We're just in favor of it because, and a little bit of clarity, I think would be fine.
Yeah.
Okay, now, John, let's go to your next one.
Thank you.
John, did you come just tonight just to correct our grammatical and
Because he hadn't
typographical
seen me in a
errors?
while, I thought I
We haven't
would
seen
come.
You were
John in a
missing us,
while,
weren't you?
except for John and I have traded
Lots of
205 emails about
So it
about the
wasn't
budget
missing
book.
you, it was the rest of
Yeah, he
us.
didn't
right.
miss me.
14A, the reserve funds for the AFC also calls out funding for the Stormwater Reserve Fund.
Yes, it does.
And I think the determination was at this time that they do not need to put in a reserve fund and may wait till October when retained earnings are certified. So they would just pass over that and not go forward with retained earnings for Stormwater Enterprise Fund.
So you're saying,
We'll just leave that reserve fund out.
Yes.
oh, it won't be in the motion, but I don't think it changes.
So we would drop and stormwater and it would be and sewer.
Yeah, but
It's not even in the recommendation.
it's just in our comment that the AFC reserve is funded by free cash while retained earnings from
Oh,
country
that's
club
true.
water, sewer, and stormwater are from users. That's still true. It's just
Yeah.
they're not going to move it. And we were pretty vague in our recommendation. It was from free cash and retained earnings, so I think we're okay with
We
that.
just wanted to make sure you knew. We don't want.
Oh, yeah,
no
yeah. That was
surprises.
informative, not requiring edits. Excellent.
That's all I got.
Yeah, nothing else exciting? We're not doing something dramatic, like, okay. All right. So.
Can I question the phrasing on two of them?
Sure.
So we have sewer retained earnings borrow. Shouldn't it just be sewer
which-
borrow? Oh,
what
sorry.
in reference?
10A and B. Say AFC recommends the town vote to approve this article using a sewer retained earnings borrow. But I assume the borrow is paid out of current, not retained earnings, so it would just be borrow, right? That is probably a nitpicky question,
Oh,
but
yeah, it is.
here
but
we
I
are.
don't know. John, so our recommendation is using using a sewer retained earnings borrow. Is that improper?
It's a borrow from
That's what I thought, because we're not borrowing against retained earnings. We pay it with current, and so it would just be sewer borrow.
A sewer borrow. Less words.
Yeah, borrow. Yeah, sewer enterprise, borrow from sewer enterprise fund.
Using a borrow from the sewer enterprise, you like that?
Yeah. That's what you get for inviting an accountant to participate.
I love having you here. Sewer enterprise, am I allowed to capital that is?
Yes, I would say sewer enterprise fund is a proper noun.
Okay. All right, so now Article 10A, the AFC recommends the town vote to approve the article using a borrow from the sewer enterprise fund.
And then B is the same thing.
Well, that's simple.
Yep.
But I lost it. What was the vote on that one? Got erased when I
Which
hit
On
it.
B is.
On
six-
A.
A is
A
900.
900.
Okay. All right, I'll trust but verify that. Okay, and then this one was not voted at the same yes, so
No.
you can't copy the that part, but I can go to here. All right, so B is also now
6-2.
AFC recommends the town to vote to approve this article using a borrow from the sewer enterprise fund, but it's 620.
Yep.
And I don't feel either that, or that does not change the intent or what we thought we were doing, so I think we could not revote any of those as well. Anybody not disagree? Any other comments on this portion of the R&R? Because we'll actually approve the whole R&R as one thing, so we don't have to approve this particular document. Anything else?
I have one question for John, actually, on the R&R. Find it.
Question for John.
So it has to do, I'm looking it up, but the motor vehicle excise tax, we went from January 3,650,000 to 3,000,009. Is that for 25 or for 26?
You memorize this stuff, John?
I see it in my sleep. No, that's our estimate for 26 that you're looking for there. Because that's where our projections are going in 26.
Okay.
And we adjusted them based upon what we're seeing in 25. So we sent out the first commitment. We don't know what our excise is going to look like until you get those fund bills in March. We looked at what our commitment was compared to the prior year, and we said, okay, we see a trend here. We're going to adjust our receipts estimates up because we have more confidence now that fiscal 26 will be higher. And this is something that we've discussed that we do throughout the year. And so by the time October comes, we'll have an even better sense and whether or not we should adjust that or any others. We looked at all of ours prior to town meeting, as we always do. And so this was one of the ones that we felt we could comfortably increase prior to town meeting, that, as we've discussed, estimated revenues offset an amount that would need to be raised, so.
Yeah, so the bills have gone out now for 25, so that's
Yes.
what you're basing your projections on?
Yes.
And do we know how much those bills add up to?
I don't recall how much the first commitment was. It was probably, I don't know, 2.5 million, 2.8 million.
So
I mean-
how does excise get billed?
Excise gets billed annually. So it's
if you buy a new car, you pay when you buy the new car or used car.
Okay.
excise
So
is
it
billed
doesn't-
January to December. If you get a car during the year, you get a new bill.
Yep.
If you move to town from out of state, you get a new bill. Okay, and then you can get an abatement, by the way, if anyone doesn't know, on your old bill. You can get some of that back.
So you don't know the actual until
We don't
July.
know the actuals until we send out the big commitment. We send out over 17,000 bills in our initial commitment. And then there are 7 commitments throughout the year where we get a file from the Registry of Motor Vehicles and we send out more bills. We'll end up just over 21,000 bills by the end of the year.
Okay.
So we try to watch that. Last year was a spike. I mean, last year was over 4 million. So
24.
yeah, we had never been up that high. So we're trying to, now that we're seeing the second year start pushing that, we're adjusting those revenues as we do every year.
Thank you.
Good. Okay, so let's move to the narrative.
Can I tell you one more nitpicky thing I found while we were looking at things?
Of course.
Okay. I knew you'd want to hear my nitpicky thing. So on page 2, 10B, it says minority statement, and every other place it says minority opinion.
Ah, good point. That's good. Yeah, why does it say statement? Because it's committee
It
statement.
also
Yeah,
says
'cause-
committee statement.
Well,
We should make it
they all do.
consistent.
They all say committee statement.
I know, but
Because
Oh,
it's our
I
committee
know.
statement.
I'd have probably said minority statement just for consistency's sake,
no,
but
I guess committee statement, minority opinion is okay.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah, I think it's historic because we used to only have the minority opinion.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know that we called it statement, but
Right.
we could consider changing them all, but maybe in the fall. And then
Yeah, I
next,
don't- I don't
maybe the
care.
next
Maybe
chair
not
can do
today.
that
I
in
don't
the
care as
fall.
much now that they're consistent,
Okay.
and unless anybody else feels strong.
No, they're consistent. That's good. All right, consistency is a virtue. All right, R&R narrative. I'm gonna make this bigger. I'm not gonna see it. I don't. All right. So actually, I'm looking at other than because we're going to vote basically except for typos, etc. But are there substantive changes that need to change in the most recent revision, which is now 2025-03-13B? No. I appreciate all the input. Andrew got to me early on, which was great because that made it a lot better sooner.
I give and I take away.
Yeah, well, that was good. Okay.
All right, we ready?
Everybody good? Yes, just one more thing because it's the whole
Oh,
R&R.
right.
Um,
Budget table.
I just wanted people to have a chance on there are the budget tables with the votes as well as the, John's 3 sheets that show that. We ran out of time to do all the Ed Bain things, which doesn't surprise me. I think we probably have to work on that in the summer or something to ever have enough time, because you never have enough time in the last few weeks to do that stuff. But ultimately, I think it would be good to reorganize some of these slightly, but not in time to print the booklet this year. But if there are no complaints about that, we are allowed to fix numbers still anyway, so. Okay, now you can make your motion.
All right. McMahon, I move to approve the Advisory Finance Committee booklet as amended and edited at tonight's meeting with the provision that typographical and formatting changes, including verifying the consistent and correct use of amounts which do not impact the substance, can be made by the chairman, the vice chair, and/or his or her designee.
Bradley, second.
Any forever hold your pieces? Okay. Ahuja?
Ahuja, yes.
Blumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Clap yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
Hanford, yes. Okay. So then the next thing we have to decide is quantity of booklets and price. So I prepared information on this because usually I get questions asked that I don't know. We have $1,106.95 remaining in our expense budget at the moment. We did get a quote for a book estimated of 68 pages, 350 copies, being $833.74 plus shipping, well under our budget. I guessed because our book last annual town meeting was 76 pages. That's why I started with 68, because our warrant is 13 pages shorter than last year. Just the raw warrant, which of course we can make up with it with verbosity, and that isn't. But that does a good indicator because the zoning and the bylaw articles are usually what throws in a ton of paper, not necessarily the number of articles, because there were also, I think, 14 less articles, but only that many less pages. And books, by the way, have to be printed in increments of 4 pages because the way we do the B-fold size drawing fold. And to that end, I mean, I was going to recommend, I got the quote at 350, but I don't think I was thinking that clearly at the time, was that we would probably want to do at least 400. I think this town meeting is going to be pretty popular. 400 books would also fit well within our budget, even at the 68 pages. You start running out of budget and would need a transfer if we did more than 450 copies, and that would be kind of close depending on the shipping charge. The other thing we could do is, when I know how many pages it is, I could probably decide the quantity if we wanted to print more and stay budget, or maybe we don't care. Not caring about the budget, but caring about whether we wanted to add more copies or not. Because if we only had a 60-page book, you can print, 450 for the price of doing 400 at the moment. But last year we were able to put up that QR code or whatever it's called.
Yeah.
Not QR code.
QR code.
It is QR code? Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And people were able to, download it too, and they can look at it ahead of time as soon as we have a PDF on the website.
I mean, I think we had high turnout last year, and we wouldn't have. I think 400 seems plenty.
So the other numbers we've had, just historically, is in annual town meeting in 2023, we ordered 350 books of 64 pages. Last year it was 400 books of 76 pages. The special town meetings have been 330 page, 524 page. I don't know if that was the library one, and we anticipated it was library and something else going on. We expected a lot. And then, but that's a huge number. And then 350 this year at the fall town meeting. But I think this will get a lot more people than the fall town meeting this year, too. So you guys all happy with 400? Sound right?
Do we know how many people downloaded? And I ask because
No
people
idea.
have said that the service in there is very poor and it's not great. So, I mean, it is a good option. Certainly saves paper, but I just don't know if people are even able to do it. So,
I don't think most people bring a computer. They'd have to read it on their phone.
Well, the Wi-Fi typically is quite good. The people who have problem with service are people who don't turn on the Wi-Fi. So perhaps we could just ask Mark to more frequently show the Wi-Fi SSID and password, because I've never had problems with the Wi-Fi in the room. It's just if you're relying on your on trying to get a 5G or an LTE signal, then it's pretty cool.
Well, you'd also have to, I think, have a laptop to even pretend to read this document. You're not going to read it on the phone, or at least maybe if you're 22 years old, you could.
I mean, all
Power of zooming.
the hard copies are picked up.
Pretty much. Yeah. John, do you have any input
also-
on this? Usually we ask you too for your opinion.
Yeah, no, I think 400 and making it pretty readily available. And if worst case, somebody remind me to I think last year somebody printed out the QR code and taped it to the table, and I could just, if it seems like people are running out, I could ask people to just go do that and ask people to share them. I also wanted to note that in one of my latest attempts to get the meeting started faster, I'm going to be providing a longer town meeting at a glance document that I'm working on right now and will finish by tomorrow, where I'm going to consolidate some of the thank yous and some of the procedures that typically take up time during my opening remarks. I'm going to put them in a longer than usual town meeting at a glance document that I also hope to publicize on the town website and the various mailing lists next week, so people can read them ahead of time. So I hope that doesn't add too many pages to your book, but rather than a 1 page, it could be that I'm going to need like 3 pages or something like that. So we'll see how it
Yeah,
goes.
I mean, yours has
But
been 2 page.
Turns out that it takes up too many pages. Let me know and I'll edit
No.
it down so you don't have to bump up.
Well, you've been at 2 pages for a while because it overflowed 1 page. So as soon as you get, we don't want to start the next stuff on the bottom of your page. So
Yeah. Oh, okay.
it's basically,
yeah. Well, anyway,
so if it goes to 3, I
Yeah.
don't think that's a big issue.
it's a time money trade off. So I'm just trying to. I know people get there at 9 and then want to know why we don't vote on anything till like 9:40 or something like that. So I'm trying to do a little bit to try to cut down on what I have to say so we can get started sooner. So it'll be an experiment. We'll see how it goes. But if it ends up being problematic, let me know and I can cut the document down in size and I'll just put it back in my remarks.
Okay, and you're going to have that tomorrow? Because
Yeah, I told Seal I'd send it to her tomorrow. I'll send it to you too, Walter.
Yeah, that's
so
fine.
you can see. Tell me if it needs more editing.
Okay, and I guess we can. Last year, we put up some sign. Owen did some of this. He got the code, I think, and
I did it.
you did it. Yeah,
I'm
you
happy to
did
do
it
again this
last year because I think
Yeah.
the time before his own.
Yep.
But I think we even showed it with Mark Stockman. We also ask people if there are 2 people that can usually share it. When I used to go to town meeting, my wife and I would just share 1 book.
Exactly.
You don't really.
Well,
need to-
if lack of copies becomes a problem, just get my attention and I'll ask people to share or I'll
Okay.
make note of the QR code or whatever. And we'll just do the best we can.
Sounds good. All right. So we need a motion to purchase, to authorize me basically to buy 400 copies of the book.
McMahon, so moved.
Bradley, second.
Ahuja, yes.
Lumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Clap, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
Okay, so that's 800. And it was McMahon Bradley.
Yes, sir.
Gee, that's a shocker. Okay.
We've got a system. I mean, why rock the boat at this point?
Yeah, no, I know. We have to shuffle the chairs again. All right. All right. So we've approved the booklet. We've approved the printing. Other topics related to town meeting. Just to let you know, I'd like us to meet at 8:30. In case there are some things that potentially could change in the next week and a half that we would may want to vote offline of the meeting ahead of time. There'll probably be there may be some minutes to approve in that period too, which are good to get cleaned up and done. And any other discussions that we need to have, but that should work. So we'll meet, and we posted a meeting for 8:30 on the town floor. I think that's all I got for that. Liaison discussions, I can give a little update on the library, kick things off. There was a public meeting, but an information center, this cute brochure there. Last night at the library is reasonably attended by people. And it was a little longer than the presentations we got. They had the architect and the OPM go through a little more detail on stuff. The good news is the article as of last night was down 102,000 in requests, and there's still some chance it may even go down. So it's now down to 12,300,000 and 303,229.
That's on the soft costs.
That's that's the whole ask. Some yes. Well, it can't be the construction bid because they're bid.
Right, that's the bid.
So that they all are, but mainly on the main thing is they got the actual bid for the moving, which came in under 45,000 under what they had budgeted, 250 for the move in, move out, potentially some storage and some other issues. They had 250. They again had good bids. I think they had 3 or 4 moving companies. Their bids were remarkably similar, actually, the ones I saw. So But it came, the ask now is down, so that's 45,000. The other thing, one of the things Rod brought up, there was a traffic study which was really, would have, if it was needed, it was going to be needed already, and it isn't. So they took that out, and that's 30,000. So thanks for mentioning that, Rod. The OPM did come down a little bit, and Rod, I asked them for more information. I haven't gotten it yet about, because they did some calculations. And we'll see what we get out of that. And I think there was one other smaller item that was there. But the big item that can still go down is right now there's 337,000, which was half the temporary facility money. And they're working with the fire and safety people and finding out what they have to actually, what you have to do to be able to use that building in terms of the alarms or the safety, stuff. For instance, if they really need to replace a panel, then they would do that, and that would eventually lower the cost of a future project at the community center, because it'd be the same panel. But if they just have to replace some wiring or some sensors or add a few things, it's a much lower cost. So the hope is that they might be able to, once they settle that, leave less money there. Oh, and I guess the one other area where some money came out was from contingency, but it's the owner's project contingency came down because that's defined by 5% of the soft cost, I guess. So came down a little bit. Anyway, so that's good. The most interesting part of the discussion is people sort of asking, well, what happens if it doesn't get approved? And it's a hard answer, and a hard answer to calculate, because there are certain things already that need repair, like the roof leaks today and the air conditioning doesn't work. So, I mean, the immediate thing would, do they come to AFC looking for a transfer at least to fix the at least part of the unit that's keeping the AC from running. But I think ultimately you're going to hit a point where to fix those kind of things, you're going to run into that same, you hit the ADA and the fire suppression limits if you get to a big enough number. And then, so there isn't a great answer on what you do if it doesn't pass. But from my perspective, the building committee's job was not to answer what was the question if it doesn't pass, but to propose what to do with the building. And if it doesn't pass, you have to figure out what you do next. I don't know. Okay. Anybody else?
Yeah, on Tuesday, the rec committee met, and the beginning of the meeting was the normal rec committee, but then the second half dovetailed into a presentation for a public conversation about the pool. So just to ground it, that we know, but if anybody's watching this, the 570 some odd thousand of the article for the pool is $406-ish thousand for the pool, and then the other was for the unit. So this was really just a conversation about the pool amount, because what I've heard but really didn't register, what's something we'd be mindful of, is that 406,000 was an estimate by the architect, who just took, had a pool expert come up with their best guess. But actually, this town is going to be getting estimates for both salt and chlorine versions of the pool, for the changes that need to be made. They're going to be actually arriving on Monday, and will be reviewed, and they should be able to present a winner by Thursday before we meet. So as by way of something, I think there was one of the people who attended, one of the guests who attended, just somebody in the audience, was actually a private pool owner that has some experience, and they had some very probative questions about the cost estimates. So they believe that there's an opportunity actually for the prices to come down significantly, but we don't know. We shall see. But it does mean that as of before, are we meeting on Thursday? If not meeting on Thursday. Okay, so we may have some information. I've asked to get, the results because I think it's going to be at the building commission, revealed at a building meeting on Thursday. But we have
building,
Yep.
municipal building committee.
yeah, I think maybe municipal building. So the good news is that there will be numbers out that may materially change the cost of the pool.
So what we will, if there's a lot of things, there's obviously about several other balls in play potentially too, but my plan would be we would vote any of those at town meeting at this point and not have a separate meeting. We can't have a meeting Monday now because it's too late to post anyway, but we could have one
Terrible.
Thursday, but my temptation is I'd rather do that while we're at town meeting. And if there's information we could read ahead of that, and you can share that, or Ron, you can share that.
Yeah, and I'll share as soon as I have
If it's significant,
something.
then we can use that, and then we can even vote when it's presented at town meeting and just rise and say
That's what I
either
was
we
thinking.
changed our
Yeah.
vote or we didn't change our vote, or we got a new vote or whatever. And I think that would be fine too.
Yep.
And that's true with all the articles, because I remember one time we were moving the town meeting to, we were gonna move them all to Saturday, and then people got up, the Jewish community got up and said, well, we should be able to go to one a year or something, and we all changed our votes. So it's important to listen to the presentation, and if there is something that comes up that's different, we can change our recommendation. Okay, that's a good report. And Rod, I know that they discussed salt before, and it seemed like salt is generally more expensive up front, but people like it for their skin, but.
And to maintain.
And
Well, actually, this is where some of the conversation came in, and it's going to come down to they'll be getting bids for both, so we'll really see where the
Yeah.
rubber hits the road there.
Right.
But the fact is, having chlorine, you have to have venting systems, and there's a lot of rules around how you store it, manage, and maintain it. Whereas salt, a lot of the infrastructure, according to the gentleman who is a pool owner as well, there's a lot of the infrastructure is very comparable in price, and there's a lot of the overhead in terms of the storing and the venting and a lot of other things where it may be more cost effective. But we shall see.
not to get too in the mud and pool talk, but I guess what I got out of that thing is somehow the salt is used to create chlorine anyway, so you do end up creating chlorine, but it's somehow different. Anyway, we'll find out from the experts, and that was a little different than I thought. Anybody else? Other than Prashant and I got the snow and ice report today. They're now just about even on wages, just about to zero. There's like a few thousand left in wages, and they're minus 45,000 in expense or something on the
Doesn't
snow and ice.
include last night's storm though, right?
No, this goes back to last Friday. It doesn't.
Blizzard of March.
My
No.
12-year-old came in last night and said, Dad,
It's
you're going to
snowing."
get called in.
Yeah, no school
And my
today.
husband said, Alexa, what's the temperature? It was 38 degrees. We're good. We're
We're
good.
good. Yeah, no, it doesn't include last night's storm.
The Blizzard of March.
They send them weekly. Okay, that's all good. How about a motion for approving the February 24th meeting minutes?
McMahon, I move to approve the February 24th minutes.
Bradley, second.
Any discussion? Other than thank you, Laura, when you're listening.
Ahuja, yes.
Lundberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Clap, yes.
Leslie, yes.
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
That's 800. Very good. Okay, so my plan now is I will take the changes I just made. Hopefully they're in the computer. If not, I'll be calling Gene in a panic. And pull that together, send all this stuff to Sheila with the newest that, and that. And then I will ask you to help review documents as we get drafts. I'll copy you on that. I will send those documents out to everybody too, so you can see. But first I gotta go home and read Andrew's note and see how many
Minor.
semicolons I gotta change to carrots or whatever those things
Or
are, or
not.
something.
Or not.
Or not. Okay, so we got out early. There's nothing else that we need, right, before town meeting? Okay. Thank you all very much. This is an incredibly busy season getting here. And
Shafford, motion to adjourn.
Bradley, second.
And thank you, Walter, for keeping us organized.
you're welcome.
Oh, yeah,
You have to vote. Beth?
Lumberg, yes.
Bradley, yes.
Clap yes.
Leslie, yes? Am I next?
McMahon, yes.
Shafford, yes.
Okay, 800. We're adjourned. Thank you, Westborough TV. And it is 8:15.
So